thought this was just so important today is because education, we do think, is going to be one of the cornerstone events. Companies are trying to rethink talent strategies to, deal with the new next normal, and these critical digital and sort of cognitive capabilities that I think are going to be really required as we sort of get ready to deal with what's next, and being adaptable and resilient and all these things. It's important, and I'm encouraging companies, for example, to double down on their learning budgets and commitment to reskilling, because I think those are going to be critical as we go forward. And so trends like, companies thinking about how to get ready for 2030 and artificial intelligence and automation have been accelerated by this. And one of the things that we thought was delightful about having you here, as you know, I don't know how many times I've enjoyed listening and having conversations with you on everything from, including TED Talks, things of this sort, but everything from, automation and next generation and how we think about training and teaching in that space. And so we couldn't think of a superintendent better equipped for where we are and what we're trying to think about right now than you. So I'm glad you're off the road and back on Zoom for a minute.
Yeah.
We can have a chat with you in this group. But I'm going to hand you over to the very capable hands of Dr. Pineda, and he's going to sort of walk you through this, if you don't mind, if that's all right.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, I know
Welcome and
Dr.
thank
Pineda
you.
very well. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, David. Hey, Dr. Pineda, how are you, sir?
Hey, Superintendent, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Good. Well, so just so everyone's on the same page, Juan Cabrera is the superintendent for the El Paso Independent School District. He came to that position in September of 2013. Before joining EPISD, Juan was a school law attorney and had worked as an advisor to a variety of school districts. In the time that the superintendent has been at EPISD, the most noticeable change is a difference in the tenor and tone. As you all recall, the school district was under scrutiny both from the state and other officials for a number of corruption issues that had been ongoing. And so the superintendent came in at a crucial time to be able to reorient the school district. And as a result of the projects that he's pioneered, not only has the school district become a leader in dual language education, but the expansion of that program is happening across all of the schools, and the new technology or the new tech network has also had a huge impact on where the school district is training and taking its students, and at the same time taking its teachers as well. The tenor of the school district has changed since the superintendent has come in. The level of excellence, I think, has also risen, and in particular at this moment, for those of you that have been following, if you don't happen to have school-age children, you've noticed that one of the things that's been incredibly valuable about the school district, and one of the things that's been an anchor for the community, is the school, EPISD's immediate response to making sure that their kids were continued to be fed, and also to make sure that they had access to technology. And so two of the biggest issues that could potentially derail how a school district would continue its mission have continued under the superintendent's watchful eye. And as he mentioned, we are pretty good friends and somebody who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. So we are very, very pleased to have you this morning, Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Pineda. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I would like to provide a little bit of context, especially since we have a lot of business leaders and aspiring business leaders in this group. But by way of just a bit of history, I think it'll give you some context on how I approached the work. I was a school teacher in my late 20s. This would have been in the late 80s. I'm going to date myself. And then I went to law school at University of Texas. So I did not come up the ranks. And Dr. Wilson and I have that in common. She has not spent her entire career in higher ed. And other than the last 7 years here as a superintendent, and then the 3 years I taught in the late 80s, I had not been in education. So from the late 80s until 2013, when I took this job, I was an attorney, and I practiced law as a software attorney, and spent 5 years in downtown Houston, big law firms, and then was able to do an international law practice where I lived in Latin America for 2 years, covering Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. And then I moved to Amsterdam for 5 years and did all international legal operations for a $2 billion software company. When I came back to Texas, I moved to Austin, and was ready for a career shift at 42. And my intent was to get back in education. And since I was a lawyer, I started a school law practice. And I think part of the reason we brought so much innovation, it's actually been a luxury, whereas some people would say and I do think it's beneficial to come up through the system and really get to learn the work. When I came back to the US in 2007, I decided to sort of get some historical context about what districts had done and where they had been, and then say, when I get to run my own school district, I want to shift. I want to take the best of the past, but consider, and David Jerome did a great job of articulating that, to consider, rather than, Dr. Pineda, we both have these issues at higher ed and in K-12. We traditionally are very siloed. We do it our way or the highway. We do what we've always done. And we sort of allow children, and we just say, you go to high school, you jump to another island, which we call higher ed, and then you go to a third island, which is trying to build a career. And my idea, when I started approaching the work, after all of the research feedback, I visited hundreds of schools while I was a school lawyer for 4 years, was to say, okay, why don't we do a better job of getting kids more contextually and specifically prepared for life in K-12 through things like TED Talks, through social and emotional opportunities, through project-based learning, through dual language, which I believe is as important as anything a child can learn in K-12. If you learn multiple languages in elementary, you're going to have access to a global economy, which is very contextual and very real for what we have today, right? And if you work closer with your higher ed partners and you begin to align secondary, sixth grade on, with what's going on in higher ed, with what's going on with the economy in terms of the jobs, and then by building some skills, values, and interests around children, to begin to not just think about K-12 as an isolated educational institution, but rather as a really important cog in the overall plan, which is one thing, which is the economics of a city, right? When you really think about it, and unfortunately most educators don't think this way, I believe, and we now believe at EPISD, that we're just not a separate education institution. We're the first major step in helping build the workforce of tomorrow. We're the first major step in getting kids better prepared to be more tightly aligned in higher ed, so that they're then better prepared for a career. The days, Dr. Pineda and David, the three of us are old enough to know, we used to like to send kids off and say, just go to university, hang out at the quad, get the experience. It doesn't really matter what your degree's in. It's all fine. We just need you to go to college, and then you'll be ready for life and you can sort of figure it out. Some of that's still going to happen. I'm not saying that we're supposed to know everything, but I know these two gentlemen will agree. The more tightly aligned we are with the chamber, with the economy, with the job growth, from the CEOs in the chambers to the higher ed to K-12, then we're going to better prepare people for the local and global economy. So the shift that you're seeing, Dr. Pineda and David, are really with that underlying premise, with us thinking about what we want our district to do, not separately to give somebody a degree. It used to be, and we're trying to change this across the country because we talk about this all over the country. The K-12 was happy and they patted themselves on the back when they gave somebody a diploma and they crossed the stage. We hold ourselves to a much higher standard. We want to create this integrated global education, rich with technology, rich with the 4 C's. A big focus of our work is creativity, collaboration. We want to make sure that they're good at problem solving, and we also build a lot of the social emotional skills. The state doesn't pay us to do that, but Dr. Pineda will tell you the kids that build some of those skills are going to do a lot better in college, and therefore going to do a lot better, we think, in life. So that's just sort of the my philosophy. And I've rehired the whole district from top to bottom. In 7 years, we replaced 92 principals, 275 assistant principals, and everybody within 7 levels of me are new to their job. So we've been very intentional about trying to hire people that share the culture and the belief that I have about our role in society. But Jose, could you really quickly go over some of the quick facts we have and talk about the organizational structure in terms of the employee base? We are the largest civilian employer in town. So Fort Bliss is the largest employer, and we're the largest civilian employer. So we're really an important piece of the El Paso economic puzzle. And I want, you already met my Chief of Staff, Jose Lopez, to talk about that for just a moment, if you can, Jose.
Dr. Pineda, can you see my screen here?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So just to go over some really high-level items of the district, this is a little bit dated information, but it'll give you a good picture of what we look like. In the top left-hand corner is our enrollment, so we're at about 58,000 students. Then you can see some demographic information, but we are at about 10% special education students, 10% military, about 30% of our student population are English language learners, and about 70% are economically disadvantaged. Regarding our financial information, we run a budget of about $500 million, so $500 million local budget, and you can see how that's broken down. One of my favorite graphics is this dollar right here, just to show you where our money goes. So a lot of the times you'll hear that we're top heavy. However, if you look at this dollar, you'll be able to see that only 3 cents, only 3% of our budget goes to central administration. 65% of our budget goes to direct instruction to our students. And with that being said, we have about 85% of our budget in personnel. So those are all our teachers, admin, custodial, food workers, bus drivers, you name it, is all part of that budget. Scrolling back to the top, we currently have a strategic plan up till 2020, so we'll be renewing that very soon. But I just wanted to point out 2 things. One, our strategic priorities. These are the pillars that Mr. Cabrera alluded to earlier. So this will continue moving forward, which is active learning, great community schools, community partnerships, and leading with character and ethics. And my favorite part, which is probably more important than our pillars, are student learning goals. And just so you know, we met with about 4,000 community members to develop these. And Mr. Cabrera also alluded to these as well, because what we asked those 4,000 people were, when your student crosses that stage, what is it that you want them to know and be able to do? And these are the answers that we got. So these were incorporated into our strategic plan. And if you notice, none of them have to do with sitting in a classroom and being lectured to all day long, or test scores. So none of the parents or family members, students, any business community that we met with, none of them thought that was important. These were or not as important, but these were the items that they cared about: the critical, knowledgeable, and creative thinkers, problem solvers, bilingual communicators, things like that. And then finally, our facilities information. So you all know that we passed the largest bond in county history, about $669 million. We had over 100 buildings, and this allowed us to start right-sizing the district. So even though we consolidated 10 campuses, we were able to send those students to newer and better facilities. In addition to that, and we briefly spoke to this right before Superintendent Cabrera jumped in, was how we've progressed since our, Dr. Pineda, you brought up, since state takeover, our previous superintendent went to prison. Since then, we have probably been the biggest and the best school turnaround story in the state, if not the nation. And the reason I say that is within about a 5-year period, last year we were in 86 based on state accountability. It's a high B. This past year, 88, which is an even higher B. We went from an 86 to a 90 with our economically disadvantaged population. In Algebra 1 alone, we saw a 30 percentage point increase for the past 2 years, 19 percentage points 2 years ago and 11 this past year. In biology and US history in our end of course exams, we've also seen from 2 to 5% increases across all levels. So this is pretty amazing for a large urban district, but the team and the leadership that Mr. Cabrera put together has given us the ability and the opportunity to get there.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. That's great. I really appreciate it. Jose's been with us from the beginning. This has really been and a lot of you, I don't know how much, just don't know all of your backgrounds, whatnot, but when you go back, and Dr. Pineda was here and he can speak to it specifically, we went from the laughing stock of the country. We really, when I took this job, people thought I was crazy. But I had been to El Paso. I believe in El Paso. Great people in El Paso, people around, that people on this call should know that and realize that we have a really unique, very hardworking community. And I knew that what had transpired, especially being a school attorney, being able to read about it and understand it from my perspective, I knew that it was just a handful of people that had taken some bad actions. And I knew that if we could hire the right people and build some momentum, we could build a tremendous institution. And we are now part of we are the founders of the Texas Urban Council, which is the 8 largest urbans in Texas. We're part of the Council of Great City Schools Executive Committee, which is the largest 80 urbans in Texas. We're part of the Social Emotional Learning Center, University of Chicago, and we're one of the 8 districts that lead that. I'm also on the Governor's Legislative Committee, the Commissioner's Legislative Committee, and Lieutenant Governor's Committee. In addition, I'm the co-founder of the Texas Association of Latino Superintendents. So in 7 years, EPISD has gone from really just not participating in any policy, governance, or legislative work to now, with the team we put together, with the scores that we put together, and with the success and creativity we're having around the type of district with a lot of agility and 21st century thinking that we're creating, you would be proud to know, and these other gentlemen know it, that we now have a seat at the table, both in Washington and in Austin. And when decisions are made in urban school districts, El Paso ISD is at the table. So we have done a tremendous job in the last 7 years. We're so excited. We're just really getting started. Now the work begins for us to really build a legacy and a tradition of success and excellence, so that our goal is for you to know an EPISD kid when they graduate, because of the skill set we've developed, the broad-based technology, language, and innovative skills we're trying to create, with a big focus on the skills that are needed for our current economy. My goal is that someday Dr. Pineda and David Jerome will be able to distinguish the caliber of graduates just based on the district that they went to school in. That's our big goal. So Dr. Pineda, we can talk a lot about a lot of different areas, but for me, I get a lot of opportunities to visit with people, and I always want to make it relevant. It's less important what I have to say, more important contextually what I can say to help move along the work that you're doing.
Sure. And we've got a couple of folks with some questions that are coming in. One thing that we had a chance to hear from Dr. Wilson this morning, and I'll ask you this question in a little bit different variation. So in your case, you worked very closely with your administrative staff. You've come up with a very tightly structured strategic plan. Taking a step back from a leadership perspective, something comes at you like a pandemic, and your strategic plan has to adjust to that. So maybe by talking about EPISD, but maybe giving some insight to the folks that are in on this meeting, how do you do that as a leader? What do you cleave? How do you is it still mission forward on all the strategic goals? I mean, do you tweak? Do you have to put everything to the side? How did you adjust over the course of the last several weeks?
Actually, that's a great question. I'm actually writing some blogs on this, and we're doing some interviews. We actually are working with the Today Show now, and maybe we'll talk about this. I really think it had nothing to do with education at all. It did and it didn't. All of the work that we mentioned over the last 7 years, at the core of the work, it was corporate change management. And I brought that from my career, right? In public institutions, we don't always think about change management. In corporate America, that's a big focus of what they do, because they're constantly shifting and trying to build an agile workforce. We actually did that at EPISD because of all the dramatic change we made. So for us, the one factor that I believe helped us more than anything else to adjust to the pandemic was the fact that we invested 7 years in building an agile, progressive, forward-thinking workforce. The fact that we weren't prepared for the pandemic really didn't hurt us, because we mobilized our team. We met all day on the 13th of March. I made the decision on the 12th. We met all day on the 13th. Saturday the 14th at 9 in the morning, we met as a team. We started working from Saturday the 14th of March, and we did not take a day off until just recently. And every single day we posed questions to ourselves about what are the challenges, what's going on, how do we adjust? And what I loved about that, Dr. Pineda, is the reason most school districts have struggled so much is because they first had to focus on agility, which is a cultural, right? It's a cultural tenet, it's a training. We didn't have to focus on agility. We already thought service was our leading pillar, and making sure we had people that were adaptable was important. So for us, then it became just an intellectual exercise about what do we need to do to meet the needs of our customers. And we think of our students and families as our customers, and our frontline people who are our teachers. How do we support our teachers to better support our customers? And how do we make that shift? And that was our focus. And I'm so blessed. I mean, without the fact that we had computers for already 6 years, without the fact that we had spent tens of millions of dollars on professional development to try to teach teachers to stop lecturing and create a more engaging Socratic seminar, project-based learning, teaching experience. If you think about those two aspects of the work that we've done, without even knowing it, we were better prepared for the pandemic than almost any district. Because my mission 7 years ago, and this is based on my own experience with what my kids liked in school, my kids, when I would interview, I have 3 kids, 2 already graduated, but at the time, I had a couple of middle schoolers and a 3rd grader, and I would talk to them and say, what are your favorite classes? The ones where I get to do things, the ones where I'm in a group, the ones where I'm working on a project. They never said, my favorite class is the one where a teacher talks all the time and I don't get to talk and I take notes. So we actually tried to shift our district into that, and we used technology to blend that. And if you think about the shift to the pandemic virtual learning, it was perfect. The 3 major components in my mind is, do you have the devices and the infrastructure? Do you have a mindset around the methodology and the logistics of how you teach in a different modality? And do your people have the will to do whatever it takes for kids? We had all those. And we shifted almost immediately. I felt like we were ready to start teaching on the 16th of March, which was the coming Monday. But that was spring break. We took that off, and then we got to work right away again. So the takeaway for people as business leaders is, the culture you build, irrespective of what's going on today and the challenges you face or don't face, will make the biggest difference in your ability to shift and to be more agile when you face a new situation you didn't anticipate.
We've got a question from one of the folks in the group, and I'll split part of this question out. But the question is tied a little bit to the mission of the school district, and I think a great question, largely just from your perspective on education. There still obviously are huge needs in terms of trade skills, and at the same time, part of retasking and readjusting school districts is thinking about tech and new tech as the example of you all. But how do you see educational institutions filling in those particular needs? Do you think that becomes a secondary factor, or do you think, back in the traditional sort of sense, you had a technical part of the school district or tech schools that were teaching some of these trade skills? Where does that fit now, and how do you adjust or account for those things?
Well, there's no other way to adjust without this communication that we're having, unless you and I mean you, UTEP and EPISD, unless we have a meeting of the minds and agree that David Jerome's, see, this is what's wonderful about the change that I'm trying to put forward. Dr. Pineda knows in years past, somebody in his shoes, somebody in my shoes, we honestly, with all due respect, David, we didn't care what the chamber wanted, did we? That's not the way we did our work. You were higher ed, I was K-12, we did our own separate siloed work. Now you can hear by what Dr. Pineda says and by our mindset, we want to shape our work. We still have to meet the Dr. Pineda and I, he has a higher ed coordinating board, and I have the TEA, Texas Education Agency, we have legislative and policy mandates that we have to meet. But nothing precludes us from adjusting the way we do our work to better meet the needs of the chamber and try to begin to build the kind of employees that they need. And to me, and I'm probably in the minority here, but we will change over time. I look at what my community needs, whether they're more nurses, more cybersecurity experts, more radio technology experts, whatever my community needs, I want to be able to shift my curriculum, still meet the standards, shift my curriculum to meet the needs of the workforce. Because to me, honestly, I mean, I'll be very blunt about this because I get in these fights all the time across the country. I don't care if somebody wants to teach XYZ because they always have. I want us to teach what will help a kid have more tools for success in today's economy. It's relevant timely and it's relevant contextually. And I think it's a travesty if somebody in my shoes, Dr. Pineda, in your shoes, thinks that they still need to teach 100% in the abstract and not think about the local economy. I'll give you an example. I mean, it's great that we might always have taught auto shop the way we taught it. But the reality is a kid can go to work at Toyota and make $100,000 a year as an auto mechanic. But a Toyota auto mechanic has a huge technology component to their job. So if I don't shift my auto shop to half technology, half understanding vehicles, I've done a disservice to my community. Because I can get a kid from anywhere in town to learn how to be an auto mechanic in the Toyota, or that goes for any new, obviously any manufacturer. And then they have a really viable opportunity to participate in a community and make a six-figure income. That's the kind of money that the Toyota mechanics are making in El Paso, Texas, if they work hard and they're good at their job. Those are the kind of shifts that I think that we need, people like us that are progressive thinking and understand the importance of, you know, our graduates have nowhere to go if our graduates don't fit into the economy. So we need to backward design the work that we do to make sure we improve their opportunities for success in the economy that we're given.
Excellent. Well, listen, Superintendent, we know that you still have a busy Friday, and we're grateful for your presence. I think that watching EPISD, especially over the course of the last several weeks, be an anchor for the community, especially for kids who may not have a way to have breakfast or lunch, or may not have had the way to be able to communicate, is incredibly admirable. I think that your stability and what you brought to the district has really shined in the last several weeks, and I know that we are all grateful for the work that you've done. So thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Doc. Can I say one more thing?
Can
you give me just one more thing, please?
Sure.
And I really mean this. If you get a chance, thank a teacher. We are working our tails off to try to make this work. And now we are up to, I'm so proud. And these folks are at the front line. We've had a couple that have tested positive for coronavirus. Two things that we're doing. We are delivering now almost 170,000 meals a week, and we're going to go all the way through June, and I will keep this going through July, even if we have to pay out of our own pocket. Right now, the USDA is helping us with this, U.S. Department of Agriculture and FEMA. But in addition to that, we're going to try to maintain some sort of summer school all year long. We are going to work with UTEP and with EPCC for dual credit. And we've also started on our own. We've got a program, a partnership with Paso Norte called EPISD Cares. If you find in your heart to give $10, $15, $20, Woody Hunt and Paul Foster have agreed to match all of our donations to the food bank and double it. So if you give 10 bucks, that's 20. 20 is 140 meals from the food bank. We've already raised nearly $75,000 through EPISD Cares. You can find it on our website. I don't touch any of that money. It goes straight to the food bank, and it's going to impact our families directly. Lastly, if you know of any family in need that is not getting served by us, please reach out to us. You can get us through email. And we are sending out either our own resources, we're partnering with United Way and folks across the community to make sure that every family, by hook or by crook, whatever we can do, get them food. We've actually delivered food to a bunch of homes for folks that couldn't get out. We'll do whatever we can. I told my company specifically, from March 13th forward, we went half education, half social services agency. And they said, what does that mean? I said, I don't know what it means. It means whatever it takes to make sure that folks are not food insecure, that they're getting some form of education. In addition to the virtual school, we've already sent out 30,000 workbooks to families in case they have intermittent or they're struggling with technology. So we are just doing whatever it takes. There are no rules for the pandemic. And I've made it clear to our employees that we will go above and beyond and then go above and beyond again to reach out to the community. So if you know of anything, more eyes and ears is better. Please reach out to us, send us an email. We'll answer every one of those and we will get in front of families that need help. Real quick, another thing, this is probably important for everyone. As of today, we're maintaining our current school year start. We're beginning to bring some kids back into the buildings. The kids that need the most help, SPED, 504 kids, maybe some at-risk kids that aren't doing well virtually. Of course, maintaining social distancing, no building will have more than 30% capacity. And we plan to do this all summer long. And also one last fact in it, it's a reality. It's almost 100% guaranteed. We are planning to do what we call rolling closures throughout the next school year. That means that we'll stand up schools and we'll physically open them. But we now have a SWAT team that we put together that's ready to close the school within 90 minutes and stand up a virtual school the next day, close for 10 days, clean the buildings, get everybody tested and reopen. And we're going to do that all year long. We're not going to stop. We'll extend the school year. We want to do our part to keep the economy going. We never want to close the district again, but we are prepared to close 1 school, 5 schools, 10 schools, 20 schools on a rolling closure calendar. But we'll keep operations going, and we're going to isolate any kind of positive coronavirus test until we have a vaccine.
Thanks, Superintendent. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Jose. We appreciate your facilitation and appreciate it very much.